I gave my best friend's kids a different life-changing amount of money. My buddy Chris and I have been tight since middle school. We're talking 15 years of friendship. He's got 3 kids, Emma, who just turned 18, Jake, who's 16, and little Mia, who's 12. Chris has always been struggling financially. His wife left him 2 years ago and stuck him with all the debt from their failed business. The guy works 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. About 6 months ago, my startup finally sold. I'm talking life-changing money here. 8 figures. I went from eating ramen to suddenly having more cash than I knew what to do with. The first thing I did was pay off my parents' mortgage. Second thing was help out Chris. But here's where it gets interesting. I didn't just write Chris a check. I had a different plan. I showed up at their house on a Saturday morning with 3 envelopes. Chris was confused when I handed one to each kid and told them not to open them until I said so. He kept asking what was going on, but I just smiled and said, wait. Emma opened hers first. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note that said, for college, no strings attached. She literally screamed and started crying. Jake opened his next. Same amount, same note. Even little Mia got $50,000 with a note saying, for when you turn 18. Chris just stood there with his mouth open. Then he got mad, like really mad. He started yelling about how he couldn't accept this, how it wasn't right, how he didn't want charity. The kids were jumping around excited, but Chris was having none of it. That's when I pulled out the 4th envelope. Inside was a check for $200,000 made out to Chris, along with the deed to a small rental property I bought the week before. Completely paid off. The rental income would cover his monthly expenses forever. Chris broke down crying right there in his living room, but then he surprised me. He handed all the checks back and said he couldn't take them, said it would ruin our friendship, said his kids needed to earn their way in life. I looked at him and said, Chris, you've been there for me through everything. When my dad had his heart attack, you drove me to the hospital at 3 a.m. When I got fired from my first job, you let me crash on your couch for 3 months. When Sarah broke up with me, you sat with me in that bar until they kicked us out. This isn't charity. This is family. Then Emma spoke up. She said, Dad, I've been working at the grocery store saving for college. I have $800. This means I can actually go to the school I want instead of just community college. Jake chimed in. Dad, I've been stressing about how we're going to pay for my car insurance. Now I don't have to get a job and can focus on school. Even little Mia said, Daddy, does this mean we can finally go to Disney World? Chris looked at his kids, then at me, then back at his kids. He picked up the checks and said, okay, but I'm paying you back somehow. I told him the only payback I wanted was to watch his kids succeed. Here's the crazy part though. 2 weeks later, Chris calls me freaking out. Turns out Emma had told some kids at school about the money. Word spread fast. Suddenly Chris was getting calls from relatives he hadn't heard from in years, all with sob stories and hands out. His ex-wife even showed up demanding half the money for her kids. But the worst was Emma's boyfriend. This kid Tyler had been dating her for like 6 months. Nice enough kid, but when he found out about the money, he started acting different. Started talking about their future together, how they should get married after graduation, how they could buy a house together. Emma was smart enough to see what was happening and dumped him on the spot. The money also caused drama at school. Some kids started treating Emma and Jake differently, either being fake nice or straight up hostile. A few parents even called Chris complaining that his kids were showing off by talking about college plans. Chris called me stressed out saying maybe we should have done this differently, but I told him this was just people showing their true colors. The money didn't change his kids. It revealed who was really in their corner. 3 months later, everything settled down. Emma got accepted to her dream school with the money already set aside. Jake stopped stressing about working and his grades actually improved. Mia started taking art classes she'd always wanted to try. The rental property has been paying Chris about $3,000 a month, which completely changed his life. He finally quit his second job and has been home for dinner every night. He even started dating again.